I'm Valerie. I'm the UX UI and product design host. I'm a senior designer at a company called Paysign, which is a fintech company based in Henderson. So mostly I build like B2B SaaS products, like internal tools, administrative portals, and then also like we also have like a customer app. So I'm able to have a lot of different design touch points. And so I'm thinking if it's just the four of us, like we may pivot because today's talk, well, I guess I'll ask you guys. Today's talk is about the state of product and user experience employment, and then ways to stay competitive. Oh, hey, what's going on? Welcome in. So I was thinking, we're a small group. And so like if today, so let me just go back let me go to this slide. So this is the main topic today, like remaining competitive as a product designer in today's tech landscape. So we can continue, like I can give this presentation, but would it be more useful for us to just to do more like a roundtable or to talk about like other things that you're interested in? I'm just thinking, like what's the best use of your time? Because last time there was a lot more designers.
I was in a previous talk in marketing, and it came up interesting thing. When we talk about product, it's usually actual product, right? Mm-hmm. But service is also a product.
Yes.
How do you apply all these concepts to the service, like what app he's building? It's a service.
Yeah.
How do you apply it?
How do you apply? Oh, product design. Well, yeah, like with
principles.
Same principles. Like every product has a certain value proposition, and every product has to fit a need. So in physical products, like this is a chair. Like people get tired, and we need to sit down, so we have this chair. And the state, like it has a single purpose. Meanwhile, like with digital products, like they are very flexible. They have different states, and so they need to be helpful at a lot of different points of a user's journey. So let's just take Facebook for an example. The need for that, like the problem at first was probably people felt very disconnected with a lot of other people who weren't in their immediate surroundings, like friends and families in other cities, and you needed ways to stay connected to them. So that's the main and original value proposition of Facebook. Nowadays, now we could stay connected with people, like see their photos. Another value add is like seeing your friends' birthdays, and then we get notifications, on that day. We get like reminders to post on their timeline for their birthdays. Another thing is we get to hear business announcements. If you're interested in a business, like for me, like I was always interested in like Cricut, for example, which is like a crafting product, but they would always like post discounts and new releases. Oh, hey, JB, welcome. Hi. Hey, Eddie, welcome. Yeah, go sit it. But anyway, my point is it's always like thinking about what are users' problems and how can you help them at that time. And since like digital products are fluid, they need to be helpful at more points of like a user journey. So like if someone has like an app on their phone, the phone was just, to call other people, but now it's like our source to everything else. So in order to make an app useful, that could be, you need a way of like getting people back onto the app. Unless you're just, there's other app models where you sell the one experience. So for example, a lot of like AI apps nowadays, you pay $8 to get like 4 or 5 photos, and you can just delete the app after that, right? Like you got the service and you're done. So but otherwise, like things like with Facebook, they want people to come back all the time, which is why they always have to be adding new features and changing things in and out. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Or we could talk more about that too.
Yes, well, I don't want to dominate discussion, but
That's okay.
like on my iPhone, I have 3 pages of different apps. I use only 2. I check my email and Instagram. That's it. Oh, I also have a Headspace.
No.
I probably
right.
have at least 60 apps installed. It came pre-installed. They never open them, never look. What is the point?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I like to delete everything first, and then just add as I go, because I try to take a more minimalist approach to like all the products, or to the digital products I have on my phone.
What was the inquiry?
Oh, so she was asking, like, there's like physical product design, but how do you apply those principles to digital products? Yeah.
Not only digital product, service.
On service, yeah.
Service is
Like
like,
you provide services too.
yeah, because it's a service design at that point becomes an in-between between physical and digital, right? Because you can incorporate either which way into the service. Yeah, no, there's ways about it. It's kind of a big subject. But
to answer your original question, I was actually really looking forward
To this?
to the stay competitive.
Okay,
Because,
okay, great.
I know it was posted in the UX Meetup and stuff.
Yeah.
The LinkedIn group, and so we don't have to go through it maybe like the entire hour.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear what you have to say.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm wasting everybody's time. Okay, but so I'll continue with the actual presentation. But again, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time here. Again, if you want to join our LinkedIn group to stay updated, there's a QR code here, and I could post it on the screen later. So I'll do a little intro. I think after I really did that, we'll go over some UX industry news, and then methods to stay competitive, and then we can go into a roundtable question and answer. So again, I'm Valerie Caña. Here's the rest of my amazing UX team. JB's here, and these are all the great people that make Las Vegas UX UI Meetup happen. All right, so the state of product user experience in 2024. I think I'll go ahead and skip this slide. But basically, I wanted to talk about the economy and employment right now. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody about all of the tech layoffs that are happening. And this is from a combination of factors, there's inflation and a lot of higher interest rates. There's, we have economic downturn, and there's fears of a recession. The rise of AI also is replacing a lot of entry-level kind of work. And we are experiencing, I guess, during the pandemic, they were over-hiring a lot of people, way too many, because they were thinking that people would play more video games and stay online and buy a lot of things. Yeah.
And a lot of it was you'd have people like Zoom in there, because everybody would have to use it online to communicate with each other. And so you needed support because the people weren't used to it. And then as things return to normal, you don't need that many people.
Exactly, yeah. So we're experiencing this, employment and roles going back down to a normal rate. But unfortunately, that is leaving way more designers than there's a need for them. Additionally, more companies are wanting to save money, so they're outsourcing and offshoring projects. And also, we are entering an era of late-stage UX, which I'll talk about in the slide after this one. So again, like I said, I didn't want to have a sad meetup topic, but I can't. The original topic was a history of prototyping. That's what I was going to talk about. I will also do that in the future, but I felt like it's really unfair to go down that rabbit hole of to be just continue learn Figma, and continue the existing workflows when all of this is happening. So I think we need to be very cognizant about Well, just in this last month, under 4,000 employees were laid off, which is actually a lot less than the previous months. But the previous months had, some months were like 4,000 people were laid off, and then there's like 2 or 3 months where it was like 20,000, like 35,000 roles were laid off, and so it's not a really great time, unfortunately, in tech. But I'm still hopeful because I made a lot of other UX and just general design practitioners who have survived the many years of changes, and so that's why I wanted to talk about different strategies of our workflows rather than just okay, here's let's just prototype. But to continue, going back to my point of what late stage UX is. So UX as a profession is still relatively new. I mean, I would say it started probably around very late 90s, 2000s. It was engineers specializing in user interface, and then web designers turning into user experience and UI designers. And I have also met people where at that time there was just a lot of talent needed, and so people in other industries, for example, they were just illustrators or print designers, or people in sales. They had relevant skills, and then they all became UX designers at that time. But now it's a much more competitive. And so there's 5 characteristics of late stage UX. So the first one, automation. And so AI is streamlining the work of designers within large organizations, and while eliminating the need for designers altogether, especially in lower stake projects. So as we see this new wave of AI and large language models, corporations are looking for ways to streamline their process and eliminate a lot of manual tasks. So that's not a good sign for production designers, but it's going to push us to become more productive and more innovative with our approaches as designers. Secondly, we have a lot of saturation, like I was talking about. So right now, with all of the tech layoffs, it's people with, even people with Stanford MBAs or MFAs are having a difficult time getting jobs right now because they're competing with people who have Stanford MBAs and also 15, 20 years of experience. And people with a lot of experience are going after roles that they're technically overqualified for because that's just what's out there. And so if you're also looking at job boards and you're also wondering why this job has been open for so many months, it's also because recruiters and companies can be way more picky in who they choose. They don't have to choose someone with similar experience. They can find somebody with the exact experience that they want. So those especially in big tech. Now, of course, I still see a lot of different roles. I don't see a lot of junior roles, unfortunately, but there's still roles that are somewhere between 3 to 5 years of experience, and then I'm not saying it's impossible to get these jobs. I'm just saying we have to push ourselves to be even better. Thirdly, commoditization. So there's a focus on scalability, and software is all about scale. So now we have to ask ourselves, what value can we bring to the table when the designs themselves are all componentized? I don't know if you also noticed the big trend in creating design systems. And there's jobs where it's designer, just design systems. And the point of that is to automate the creation of of user interface design. So now that for example, Figma released Code Connect, this is a feature they don't have yet, but they talked about it at Figma. Now that you can connect your components to your code base, in just, in a few years from now, you can just drag and drop components and into no-code software. And so therefore, that's democratizing design, not just to designers. Like anybody who can just kind of learn Figma, you know, if you can learn Canva, that's the kind of the idea. If you can learn something like Canva, if you use PowerPoint, these are all kind of like drag and drop kind of editors in a sense. Anyone can design something. I'm not saying that thing is good. I'm just saying more people can do it. The other thing is financialization. So there's greater influence of financial health, shareholder interest, and business metrics in design decisions. So in a world where design is used to appease shareholders and boost stock prices, advocating for users' interests can become an afterthought. So at the end of the day, designers who work for for-profit companies are not helping users as public service, but because happier users will generate more business for the company that hired us in the first place. So to be able to advocate for users in such a results-oriented market, designers need to feel comfortable asking new types of questions in a way that's going to feel a little bit interrogative of like the product and of the product team and business stakeholders. Like, so we'll have to ask things like, is this really going to increase customer satisfaction, or are we simply trying to keep our customer service costs down? Do we have users' best interest in mind, or are we capitalizing on empathy merely as a business driver? So everything, we have to just talk in money now. We can talk, like designers, we could talk about all of our awesome, like crafty things together, but when we're outside, when we're in actual meetings with everybody else, I would just recommend just like framing everything as, you know, this is beneficial for our business or it's not, and they don't really care about anything else. I mean, of course, be ready to talk about it if someone does ask you those questions, but we have to be talking about how this is going to increase revenue. Lastly, is disintegration. So this kind of, to me, like, is related to number 3, like commodifying everything. So now we see that a lot of UI looks like material UI from Google, like that. You know, the rounded rectangles. You know, the like these kinds of fonts, the sans serifs and stuff like that. Like very minimal and stuff like that. So, but now we're going to see that everywhere. So people are kind of getting numb to, you know, what they're seeing, and now they're also like seeing through or seeing dark patterns if they're in place. So dark patterns like, you know, if you didn't like do like a cookie like warning, or like putting a bunch of like important like user agreements and like hiding that in legalese, hiding a lot of like user administrative tasks like in menus, making it hard to cancel, making it hard to cancel subscriptions. Like people are going to see through that now and expect better, because if it's not like up to an accessibility standard, or if things are not so intuitive, they're just going to drop off from that product immediately. So I mean, like, I know it's like, I don't know if I'm scaring you all, but it's just a good opportunity to overcome these challenges. And so we'll ask ourselves, you know, will companies continue to prioritize margins and invest in AI at the expense of humans, or are we entering a new era of design democratization and efficiency? And I also want to ask you, like, if you are, whether or not you're a designer, actually, I mean, we really are all designers if you're like in the product space. Like, ask yourself, like, are you a designer, or do you just execute designs? Meaning, now that like we're going to automate the creation a lot of UI components, which was basically all pixel pushing. We don't need to focus on that anymore. Like we can like understand it enough, but it's more important to think like a designer, which is about reframing problems, understanding context, knowing your users to make better decisions and make those decisions loudly. So yeah, so I'll talk about some different methods to remain competitive as a product designer. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, and we can talk more about it afterwards. Like I was saying, it's an opportunity to move past being a pixel pusher and move toward being an impact maker. So some things we can do is community build. Network like never before. Don't network when you need it. Do it now. And actually, I really like this one because it's also going to force us to be nicer and more open human beings. And it's your skills stay sharp as much when you stay part of the conversation. And so that's why I love spending time coming to Tech Alley and different tech events and hosting things like this, because it's forcing me to always stay part of the conversation. So at least you guys know we all know something that's going on, and there's always value in every person that you meet. You never know what it could be. In addition to that, you never know who can help you with resume advice or resume review, portfolio review, career advice. So just build your community now. So this, everyone here, everyone in our LinkedIn group, and everyone else at Tech Alley will hopefully be helpful. Other things you could do is explore new business ventures. A lot of people from like big tech and AAA games are leaving or being laid off, they're creating their own ventures nowadays. Like they're building their own studios, making more startups. So if you have the ability to do that, I really push you to make something of your own and explore emerging markets in places outside of the U.S. in other countries if possible. Or you could transition industries too. And I just wanted to make this joke because I came back from Hawaii the other day, and I was like, man, should I just work on this abalone farm instead?
Very specific farm.
It was like I had the time of my life. Abalone is really is snails. Very delicious though.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, if we can't make it in UX, maybe we could just become a farmer. Otherwise, you have to adapt and upskill. So, going back to this, because I was talking to my sister about it, because she's a video games producer, and they're especially having a very hard time. Even she's having a hard time, and she works at a AAA studio, but she's like, unfortunately, a lot of people will just have to move industries. So if you don't want to do that, we got to get serious. So the first method is to adapt to ambiguity, meaning so you don't be married to specific design frameworks. In boot camp, in your college education, in books, there's always these ideal ways of designing. And man, would I love to stick to that, but it's just not possible actually in a lot of companies who are, go ahead.
I want to tell a quick story about this. So especially depending on the team that you're working with, you can try to stick to a specific framework, but you really have to be able to adapt with your team. And if it's not working for your team, then you might have to adjust the framework, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, go ahead.
Okay, I'm not a designer.
That's okay, yeah.
But I work with software development. And I have worked for probably a few dozen different employers. And every time you go to a different employer, you have to use different language, different tools, different operating environments, different IDEs. That's, unfortunately, reality is use what they've got. You don't get to use what you want.
Well, I'm sure both of you guys have experience where they get stuck into one framework, and to shift from that is so grueling. And you see this process die as you guys are forcing yourself through it because they don't want to pivot.
I understand what you're saying, and I disagree too. I was lead software engineer for the U.S. Air Force Strike Project, which is the Air Force Personnel Command Casualty Estimation Simulation. So they gave us a contract because they wanted to move off of Sun Workstation onto PC, and they wanted to shift away from legacy Ada code to Visual C++ code.
Okay.
And so we had to re-engineer the whole thing from the ground up. We did, but there was a 99% reduction in code size and complexity.
Oh my gosh,
We took
okay.
a roughly 500,000 line code Ada program and shifted it down to a 3,100 line code Visual C++ program.
Wow, that's a huge
And
reduction.
we finished in 4.5 months early.
Wow.
Well, that was
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was a shift out of necessity.
Yeah, that was shipped out in necessity. And I don't think that's unusual. Because necessity is what drives a lot of things.
That's right.
Market changes, dynamics change, foundations change. And you have to be able to adapt and migrate. If you don't, you die.
And it's one of the benefits of what I've noticed in tech and in the military. They're really good at recognizing flaws, understanding specialists, and knowing to shift that. That's not what I'm experiencing in private sector all the time. Private sector can be very stubborn depending on who the stakeholders are.
Well, I know government. I think of words.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I designed, now I know it's a different type of design than you're talking.
Oh, no, yeah, but still.
I designed one of the compensatory fees programs. There's all of two. But I laid the foundation overview, did the data modeling and everything else that one of the two government uses. And this was a multi-billion-dollar solution.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I mean, it was real fun because their solution they proposed and the contract did was blown out within the first 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh,
And I mean, scope grew.
wow. Yeah.
I mean, scope was nuked.
Jeez.
Because they wanted to access databases. And they wanted to raise the number of concurrent users on the system to over 50.
Okay.
So I just went to Microsoft and says, okay, how many concurrent users do you have? Microsoft software, Microsoft documentation, sent it up. You can't do this. And then, so we had to, because Treasury had already announced to the public when this would be due by, we had to finish a custom C# application in the same time frame as an access database for all of it.
That's a strange type of hurdle.
We did it, but, I mean, my running joke is I had it light.
Yeah.
I was only have to work 72 hours a week.
Oh my goodness. Whoa,
Just
crazy.
to get through
Yeah.
over the line.
Well, usually what I would do is when I came in the morning, the first thing I would do is send all the programs on the case late.
That's right. That's right.
Because what they do is they come in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and if they were still there at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's like, nope, go home. I'll be with the project manager. If he complains anything, he can talk to me.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, that's crazy.
We did it.
Yeah. Just sacrificing hours of sleep for it.
I know.
But I
That's
had to
it,
work
yeah.
6.5 days a week.
Yeah. No, that's
But
a good
it's
note.
about the point that you have to adapt to the new reality. And the new reality is like water. It's constantly flowing.
Just to kind of put this into perspective, how big was your team?
Which team?
The one that accomplished what you just mentioned.
The threat project or the one for one of the government service enterprises, which I can't say which one.
The speed run with the C#.
The 802, that one. 5.
Only
5 people. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
like when you start scaling, that becomes
Yeah.
like a horribly slow thing to pivot. When you start having more and more people.
Yeah, and then that's actually been widely proven is there's a certain threshold in software development
Yeah.
where if you increase the number of people
Mm-hmm.
over a certain percentage,
Yeah.
that it takes you longer.
That's right. It's weird, right? Yeah. It's such a strange thing, and it's actually common with a lot of other things, right? The more people add to it, it starts to slow things down.
But go down to the core, which I think what you're trying to get at, is why does it take more time when you have more people?
Yeah.
Because it's harder to collaborate and it's harder to communicate.
Right.
And so your ability to remain engaged and have a common understanding gets harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
Because you have different wavelengths,
That's right.
different thought patterns, different perception.
That's right.
And a lot of what you have to do is you have to coordinate and all be on the same page.
Yeah.
And to do a lot of that, you have to simplify. And so you're talking about a lot of this stuff. When you talk about automation, most of the automation stuff is simplifying the process to be able to automate.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at the pieces and the goals, and you're going, okay, how with these pieces, how can we make this reach these goals?
Right. Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
a question on your third bullet point.
Sure.
Specifically with engaging and continuous learning and staying updated. I think as someone that would be considered like a junior designer at this point, that bullet point is taught and explained a lot. But I don't think there's ever really any discussion about actionable steps. So I know as far as YouTube and as far as just like reading articles and stuff, as far as just what are design trends, like it's important to do that. But I was wondering if you had any strategies of what the next step from reading those articles like would be and stuff.
Yeah.
Because they talk about it all the time. They're like, oh yeah, like you want to like stay updated with trends. Okay, cool. I remember one of the articles I read was just like, remember back in the days of like glass morphism and stuff.
Yeah.
So we have these articles, we have these, and then we have discussions about AI and stuff. I was curious what your input would be of like, okay, so I have this knowledge, I've read up on like what it's design trend. What exactly are you supposed to do with that newfound information?
Oh, gotcha. Personally, for me, it was about like always learning like whatever the latest software is. So like, thankfully, I was in a position where like my company was using, like old things, or I don't. Before me, like I actually don't even know. Like they didn't even really have designers. They just had developers who were like designing, right? And then we were like using like Adobe like XD first, and then I would invest in courses that can give you some certificates in Figma or Webflow, or like learn like ProtoPie, just like learn whatever like this new software is. And then I talked about those things, and then I talked about it, and then also put myself in meetings where they're like, oh, we're having like all of these issues like about other things, and then that makes me, then I have like an arsenal to draw back from, like, oh, well, if we're having a problem with, if the scope keeps changing for this product we're making, like we're making like a peer-to-peer like payments like processing flow, the scope of that kept changing all the time, and like the product managers would get like new requirements like every day. And so I'm like, well, how am I really supposed to like design all this stuff and then like manage like literally hundreds of comments in like Figma files? And then I said, oh, let's go and get Zeppelin. And this was like a little while, like it was a while ago. I don't know if like other people like use Zeppelin nowadays, but the point is, it's just like, here's a new.
I'm curious.
Yeah. Oh, like some people definitely still use use Zeppelin.
People use Zeppelin because for some reason they just can't get off of it. Even I know it's tied mostly to Sketch, and I think there is a Zeppelin plugin for Figma, but it's just, I don't know why.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, that was like a little while ago. But yeah, so I'm just saying like, oh, I ask everybody like, what are the current, like the issues you're facing in rolling out this product, right? And then I would give my solution, and then just give it very strongly, and they're like, okay, yeah, let's just go with that for now. You know, like it's fine, like we don't have to roll out Zeppelin for every project moving forward, but it's good enough for now. And so that kind of goes back to my first bullet of like, don't be married to specific design frameworks or specific tools, because now like companies, they're trying to consolidate like a bunch of new like product tech stacks. And so, you know, they're always going to be wondering like, okay, where are we going to like direct our company resources? And so if you have an answer, even if it's just good enough for that time, that's good enough, you know? And then we don't use Zeppelin anymore. You know, we just like stay in Figma. But yeah, so that's really what I mean. It's like we can't just think, okay, here are the deliverables at the very, like, you know, here's the product requirements, and we say, okay, here's your we're going to list out the deliverables, and then you deliver it on them. That's actually not doing the work anymore. The work is always being in the conversation at all times, and just doing, you know, you have to just do what's good enough at the time. And then what I would do, rather than just like, here's my, like the list of deliverables, now I have a work diary of like, here's every conversation I've had, this is what we decided on, this is what we didn't decide on, and like, this is my impact at the time. And so then I can draw my case studies from there instead. Because yeah, like things are changing, and I was also like very uncomfortable in the ambiguity at first too, for like certain projects when like new people came on, because I'm like, what are we doing? I was expecting like a Jira ticket, or like I was expecting like, you know, you to make a product roadmap in Asana, and it's just not like that, because there's a lot of work without ideals sequencing, and so we just have to like at least understand, you know, what's happening on the IT side. Ask product managers, always be in conversation with them, and try to fill in the gaps as you go. Like, okay, you know, like we're working on the design system right now, and we're still working, like trying to figure out like the developer support. And I'm like, well, it'd be great if they're in the conversation now, but I guess this is what I'll do, this work first instead. Like researching like all of these like UI kits, like researching like how to, you know, create like the dark mode colors, and like, okay, all of these things are set, and I always talk about it every time. And for me, that's really hard, because I try, you know, like maybe this is part of like a different slide, but we can't be quiet about our accomplishments, or quiet about even the things that you're thinking about. Because if you share even like, oh, like I just like came across these articles, or people are talking about this software, and I went into that software and I learned it, and this is what I found. You know, like with Webflow, that's like, so now I'm like, I'm on like a Webflow, you know, project, and I didn't know it before, and I'm like, but I can learn it, you know? And so that's actually like a little more difficult to do, but it's fine. You know, sometimes we have to just like fake it till you make it. So sorry, to go back to your original question, pass the articles, get into the software.
Yeah.
Just learn it, and then have an opinion about it. Yeah.
I want to add to this, because just briefly, because I don't want to move on, but I want to add to that. So about staying up to date on trends. So as somebody who is a developer and designer, I've noticed staying up with trends looks completely different for developers and designers. Like developers, it's pretty easy to, you know, read the latest docs, you know, and you, like for me, I listen to a lot of podcasts, you know, and things like that. So that's pretty general stuff to stay up to date. And as a developer, it's easy because it's like, oh, okay, you know, go read the latest docs, they keep it updated, it's like straightforward, there are the updates, right?
Yeah.
With design, it's much more, there's a lot more ambiguity, you know, to point to this slide here. It's like you have these traditional design patterns that really don't change very much, right? And I'd say a big part of staying up to date on trends in design, as silly as it sounds, is just paying attention to the world around us. Something I've recently realized is that sans serif fonts are super trendy right now. The Hims and Hers brands, that kind of logo, like that sans serif font is everywhere
Yeah,
right
it
now. And, you know, beyond like visual design elements, like, you know, let's think about like user experience design trends. So like voice to text, for example. I think it's really important to just kind of pay attention to the world around us, and like, you know, every app has voice to text functionality now. It's pretty much just standard. I can use my voice on my Roku TV, you know what I mean? And I find it's a poor user experience when I'm in a certain streaming app. And I'm trying to use voice to text for search, and they don't have it, but it's in every other app. So yeah, that's just a bit of my advice. And
the term serif, right now, sans serif.
Yes.
Oh, the serif. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that's sans serif.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking, I think
That's
you were
okay.
correct.
No worries.
I'm talking about the serif fonts are like very trendy right now.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, thank you, Jake.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so we gotta put in the work, and yeah. So going back to finish off the slide, going back into, you know, why do they call careers practices? And practice means you do it every day, but you don't do the same thing every day. You study the craft, study the world around you, and make that heard. So, you know, like the work that we do, like think of it as a publication. Like before, I was like, oh, here's my one presentation about it, done. Or like user personas, one presentation, done. No, it's like you have to add, like, here's a user persona, right? And remember this. Hey, let's talk about it again. Let's talk about it again. We always like add on, yeah. Always keep it part of the conversation. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of paying attention. But yeah, you can't just deliver something and think that's that. Okay. Yeah.
Going on, right now I'm working a lot in data analytics. And we're talking about requirements changes. Yeah. My joke is that I've begun to start thinking of requirements changes and scope alterations as a positive thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because what it usually means, especially with data analytics, and probably with a lot of other parts of design, another thing, is that the person, your customer or your user, is learning. And they're going like, wait, if this is true, thinking, what about this and this and this and that?
Yeah.
And some of that's really good, you know, and the hard part is when you start getting that, and it gets back to what he was saying, is businesses are risk averse too.
Yeah.
And so they like using the same thing over and over again because they don't know what's going to happen if they use something new and how are they going to know what breaks.
Yep.
And so they're risk averse. And so I think I'm right.
No, that's all right. No, yeah, it's true. Yeah, they are very risk adverse. So like it kind of goes into like these next two slides of like, you know, so there's like different kinds of designers, and this model applies to like basically every kind of employee, especially in tech. But it means, you know, a T-shaped designer means like you are a generalist, and you know, and you're fluent, and you're capable of doing a lot of different a lot of different steps in the design process. But you particularly are an expert in one of those areas. There's also things called, or like employees called M-shaped or comb-shaped designers. So if you can imagine, like, you know, if this gets longer and this gets longer, and that's like designers who can code, or you know, and vice versa, or product managers who are also like data scientists. And I know it's like, we shouldn't be doing like too many jobs. Like we should also have like a work-life balance. But that's why we have to leverage AI to again automate all those other processes. Because like now, like, oh, visual design branding is like, oh, there's so many parts of it that's easier. There's so many parts of UI that's easier now. So now I can like work on, you know, a breadth of skills.
I have a question. So how do you utilize like ChatGPT or similar apps to help UI designers?
Oh, definitely. So like, we have a recording of a couple months ago of like AI tools from John. But AI tools can now make a lot of like wireframes, and they can like they can kickstart brainstorming, but they usually do it in very like predictable patterns. Like, oh, here are like easy solutions. Like, oh, like make me a landing page for, a fintech company, and then it can generate like different ideas. So before, like just to make those wireframes, even though they're so simple and they're simple patterns, it would still take me like a few hours or so. But now like they're just generated. So now I've saved time. Like now I have other hours to learn more about, to like interview my product manager or interview stakeholders now to learn more about the context. So, and that's the thing, like the more we learn about the business context and know our users, that's when we can make decisions. Like AI can generate so many things, but who's going to decide on the thing that's right? And so that's why we need to have a strong opinion on what that will be.
Also, fortunately, it seems like most people are now referring to AI incorrectly. What happens is there's several branches of AI. And what we're talking, when we talk about ChatGPT and whatever we talk about with AI anymore, are what they call large language models. So what they are is they're a computer trying to figure out, based upon your words, what it is you're after. Sort of like a Google search engine.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've done white papers with AI on used car prices, sales at auctions, and they use an entirely different model to generate those. So AI can make decisions, but you're probably not going to go to a large language model for a decision-making process. You're going to use a different model. And if you don't have, getting back to what you were saying, if you don't have familiarity and understanding of different technologies out there, you're not going to be able to select the right one.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to adapt it. And use it properly.
To add to that, like I think that most designers probably aren't going to go as far as learning about each large language model. Like that's pretty technical and kind of falls under engineering. But nowadays, I would say for designers, a lot of design tools are implementing AI features. So I think it may be beneficial for a designer to really start looking into like the new features that some of these design tools are planning on implementing. That way you don't have to like spend too much time learning about the different models and different types of AI for your use case. Like you can kind of just focus on what tool you need to use and if that has the capabilities you're looking for. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Actually, I wanted to go back to the
go back.
slide.
Okay.
I just really like that T. So hi, the other non-actual designer in the room. But I really like the cross-discipline competence. I think it can go a really long way, and kind of echo that. If you have even just a little bit of knowledge and something that's like adjacent to what you do, it really goes a long way. So
Exactly. Yeah.
engineer turned program manager. It's helped me a lot to actually know what I'm talking about from like the tech side of things.
Yeah.
And being able to leverage that. And then I guess the only comment that I have with AI is like if you don't know some of these things, just using ChatGPT as an example, also echo your sentiments of calling everything AI is stupid. But using ChatGPT, if you don't know about one of these things, you can be like, hey, talk me through how I would start doing this, or how would I design that, or how would I go about learning this. And it can really kickstart some of that. So.
That's a really great point. Yeah, like all this education, so easy to access now. So like for example, I'm like, oh, I didn't know like a lot about code, or I still don't. So I just asked ChatGPT, and now I'm like, okay, actually I need to ask like the developers in the room, like, oh, is there a good certificate that I can do? I'm really not trying to become a software developer. I'm just trying to become more fluent in coding.
Because they have pain points of like things that they've worked with potentially with the designers. Like, man, I really wish a designer knew this, or that. And
Yeah.
When they do that, it's like, oh yeah, I can learn that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, and especially like when you're like creating like design systems and stuff, it's like I need to know like more about code, so I know how to name everything, how to like write all this documentation. So yeah, it's very cross-disciplinary. But it's easier than ever. Again, like shave off the hours doing all of that grunt work. Now we could just like live in ChatGPT canvas. Okay.
Be careful though.
Yeah. And then of course, like ask real people, or like, yeah, interview the experts and get their take. Additionally, so industry specialization, very important even when you are a junior. I mean, you probably heard this like all the time of like, make the portfolio for the job that you want. But yeah, like, through the years, I've noticed when people say, I'm willing to do anything. And I'm like, oh no, you're definitely screaming young. Like you definitely seem like you don't have a lot of experience. And so back to like the T-shaped design, for me, I have to add fintech and healthcare to that. Like I have to know more about my industry, because if I'm making a product for that industry, like, yeah, I'm gonna have to know those users and the needs of that market. And so,
like, I just want to say it's so real, because like as a developer and designer, I've always thought like these are means to an end. Like you can't design a great product without understanding the industry that your product is part of, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why like Duolingo, they're hiring designers because like they're getting into like math and music, and they're hiring math teachers and music teachers, and,
Also, you have to deal with ATSs.
Oh yeah, that too.
So-
That too. The more buzzwords you know. ATS, the
applicant tracking system. So literally put, when you send your resume, they send it to an ATS and they start looking for their keyword list. And if you don't make enough of the keywords on their list, you don't get seen, ever. And I mean, this is so notorious because it was back in like 2000 timeframe, 2000, 2002. Robert Lewis, who was a syndicated journalist for InfoWorld, wrote, I almost wonder if HR considers their job responsibility to not get qualified job applicants. He was complaining about the fact that you had a lot of COBOL programmers who could be retrained to work with new languages, but they weren't getting in because they weren't getting the right buzzwords in their resume. And in addition, HR was rewarded for applicants that stayed in the job for a long period of time, which usually indicates a lack of,
thank you.
usually indicates a lack of talent, a lack of innovation, and a lack of ability to adapt. And so that you were hiring managers wanted people who were in the job for 2.5 years, not people who were in the same job for 10 years.
Right.
That you had to have increasing responsibilities and promotions.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, then you were what you would call your grade D candidates. But HR would, because HR was rewarded for a person staying in the same job, the same position for a long period of time, would give them a list of D candidates because they would get more applicants than needed, and HR would pare the list down. So a lot of it is you have to have a lot of buzzwords that are appropriate, which is where knowing more things puts it in there, and you put it in like the skills section or other things to minimize its impact on your resume. But you can fill up these sections to match these things.
Yeah. They're very smart.
And that for any, unfortunately, is true for any job I take anymore.
So for the sake of time, I will briefly go through the other slides. What is the next session start? Like 1:45? 1:45? 2?
Yeah.
Oh, 2? Oh, okay. Wait, what time? Oh, we have a lot more time. It's 2:30.
Yeah.
Sorry, I always forget. Okay, cool. Sorry. Yeah. Those really great points. And then also going back to what you were saying, that design is just a means of getting to somewhere. Like, so my second bullet, design is about anything but itself. And so, like, it's a very interesting field, because I feel like, like if you know design, you're actually, and you have like, you build your eye for design, you're actually like good at like a lot of other things, like, like interior design, or like painting, fashion design, like you have the eye for it. But yeah, like design could be applied to anything else. So that's why, if you have to be passionate about the mission of and the industry that you want to work in. And that will like fuel the fire of product sensibility. Like, oh, I have all these ideas. Like I know these users. I know all these like pain points of all these other people, and design is just merely the tools to build the thing.
Like if you want to build an abalone for it.
Exactly. Which I learned so much. I really do. Like, if you guys ever go to the Big Island Kona, it's Big Island Abalone Tour.
Did you take videos?
I did take videos. I could show you guys later.
Yeah, just before you wrap up, I want to
Yeah.
add one example to this for context. Like, it's like, I don't know why this is the example I came up with. I used to work at a dispensary. So, imagine like you're building a dispensary app. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You've never gone to a dispensary before. Maybe you don't smoke cannabis, you've never entered a dispensary. How are you going to build a great dispensary app if you don't understand anything about like those users,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, just an example like understanding the industry that you're designing for leads to better products.
Yeah. And so let's say you are interested in an industry you don't have experience in yet. If you're interested in a dispensary or cannabis industry, you could just do an observational study, and all that is literally going to the place and writing a journal about it, or you just document what's happening, or the people there, you can go ask them questions. And technically, if you're trying to write a case study, try to write case studies for your portfolio, that's its own case study. So let's say, how they're like in a lot of job applications, it's you need to design, you need to own the design process from end to end. That does not mean that's one case study. You can break, I did research, right? Link 1, link 2, prototyping, usability testing. And so, my point is if you're interested in doing that, video games, cannabis, or healthcare, just go and do it. And so I also wanted to add, because someone was asking me well, what do junior designers do nowadays? And I heard from recruiting managers that unfortunately student work is also not enough, and you have to do as much client work as possible. And so, however, I'm going to say something, and it may, you can agree with it or not. It's just something that I went through when I was a younger designer. But I did I did free work, I did work that was not up to the value that it really was. But I did it for the time only, to get that experience. And so, if you're having trouble finding work, you can reach out to all your local businesses, reach out to nonprofits, and then just tell them, hey, I think, if you're trying to, I can help you with sales, and I can do that with these UX research tools. And you do that, and then that's a case study, So, yeah, and then it's and then you just capture the conversations you had with that stakeholder. And that's the most important part, that you dealt with someone else outside of you. Yeah.
I like that, because you're not approaching with design, you're approaching with sales. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, everything is about value added.
Yeah.
What do you add to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you aren't thinking about how am I going to be serving them, how am I going to be adding back to them?
Exactly, yeah.
then
Or you can,
be there.
yeah. I know this is not really part of this slide, but it's there's all these developers out here. I know if you're trying to transition from development to designer, just work with a different developer, and build something. And then that's its own case study. Developer collaboration and handoff. That's its own thing. Yeah.
The only other ideas that I have here is startup weekends.
Yeah.
A way to, if you're learning a new framework or learning whatever it is, try to apply it within there. I was going to say the nonprofit thing too. That's cool that you think that as well. And then I think the last thing is for industries as well. There's nonprofits that might be within a particular industry, so that can be a way to start networking even, and then just maybe being able to design something for them, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't need anything so much, it's just why don't you just come help us?
Yeah, no. Exactly. You can, I don't know, they can give you a donation, I guess, for if anything. Or the reason I did free work in the beginning of my career, this as a graphic designer, I did free work for her for a year. but she referred me to people who did pay. Yeah. So it was good for the time. All right, so next slide. Yeah, and like we've been saying this whole time, invest in user research and strategy. So I'm just gonna basically say what I said before. The UI process will be more automated in the future. I do want to say, like, that doesn't mean you shouldn't know about like typographic skills and how to do like color palettes and corner radiuses. Like, I believe that a good designer will still know the theory and why. And that's just like reading like books, reading like publications and stuff like that. Because as long as you understand why, when I see AI generate something, again, like I have more context and better decision-making ability to decide what's right. So you don't want to just like leave everything to, to something that will, to an AI that will generate. And I think, so my first bullet is something I've always like talked about in other meetups. Like human behavior is just so not consistent at all. It'll always change, from generation to generation, from different regions, to different seasons, demographics, different years, the economy, all of these, it will always change, which is why it's so important to focus on user research and strategy. Of course, like computer technology will also change, but it's like, the point of computers is to make it more rational, right? Like it's logical, not like kind of predictable. But humans are always going to be weird. And like, for example, Gen Z, whether or not at some point, if you're a designer, like into the future, we're going to be building products for them. And they want so many different things. Like they want like brutalist design aesthetic. They want the 90s to come back. They don't like being talked to in like this kind of like corporate voice. And that's why they're so like literate at all of, in using any kind of device. Like we have to start thinking about like the future, like future interfaces, like voice and
why we're leaning more towards touchscreens versus keyboards.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, the size of phones, all of that. So, then also then there's like different like policies like in school now, like what you can use and can't use. So so FYI, like I'm applying to like master's programs now. And on almost all of the sites, it's like if you used AI to help write your application, please just note that in your bibliography. So like they don't even discourage it, like they just know it's like we're going to do it. But yeah, so that was just kind of funny. But anyway, there's still going to be UX researchers that have their PhDs and they're on that's a totally different level because these are the people like doing like massive studies and doing publications. But if you know enough like user research, or at least to know enough about like your segment, that'll be a good strategy to keep you moving. Yes.
Also try to factor in the biases too.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, people have a lot of biases so the other the difficult thing is at most companies they also don't really want to invest in user research because they think it's so expensive. Yeah, and it's just so frustrating.
It's a good measure of how you can testify your management.
Yeah, exactly. But you can always offer them a spectrum of research you could do. And I would always say, well, the most ideal thing you can do is this that costs this much, which is running all these tests online and it costs thousands of dollars, right? Or if you could at least spare me a few hours of give me a few gift certificates to interview some users, it's better than nothing. And they're like, oh, I didn't know we only need to spend a few $100s. It's better than having nothing at all. So I'm pretty sure that this will be an issue you face. Well, at least I faced it, and I've heard a lot of people go through it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working with a small team right now, and the founder said exactly that. They said, oh yeah, resources for user research right now. We have to give incentives, and things like that. And, I offered a counterpoint. I'm like, well, if we find certain stakeholders where we're really solving a problem for them, and they're willing to work directly with us because they want to tell us what they're looking for, that can be another way to do user research, I think. Besides just like, the standard incentives, like if you can really form a bond with a specific stakeholder or something like that, and then they can almost be like your guinea pig.
Yeah, exactly. This probably also goes to another like slide later on, but to piggyback on what you said, like there are stakeholders you can buddy up with, because you never want to like enter a meeting without ever talking to anyone beforehand. Like actually, and this is actually like in the user experience team of one, and this is like what happened, or like what I heard from and have seen like my VP of design do. He has a meeting with every single person before the big meeting. And he pitches to them and he's like, what do you think? And then they have a long talk about it. And then at the actual meeting, if he didn't do that, like people are usually like more quiet and they'll be like, oh, I need more time to think about that. And then we're just like stuck in this cycle of like circular discussions. But then since he put in so many hours of like doing that political work beforehand, like they're more in agreement with it. And that's also important to have that kind of visibility when you're out there in the field. Like Nick has all the answers. Like, oh, he's saving us so much money on user research, because he came up with these ideas for us. And now we trust him, right? Because you demonstrated that beforehand. Unfortunately, unfortunately, but also very cool. Like it's very political. But yeah, it's a lot of talking in this field. Oh, and that leads me into the lean teamwork. We were talking earlier that like smaller teams are more agile. Like when there's less people, you can there's less, or it's easier to have a shared language and easier to share responsibilities. And you don't have to worry about like training a lot of other people. So I see, with all these layoffs, they're realizing like, well, like one designer can do like all of these jobs rather than like 3 or 4 of them. And so I think we're all going to be seeing smaller teams. Unfortunately, that's going to give a lack of mobility within the company, but you'll be able to have greater visibility in your company now that you can focus on higher impact work. Again, not the UI grunt work, but more on like the strategy and decision making. So the other points here: don't get burned out. So integrate AI, and then you have more an opportunity to dive deeper with everybody, and then. I don't know if so I've been like talking about like team forming like recently, and so in any kind of relationship you're in, like personal, relational, and professional, you go through a period of forming when you're just coming together, or maybe you're the new person on the team and you're forming and everything's like really exciting, right? You should capitalize on that momentum. Yes?
One thing with relationships, I think relationships are always a 4-letter word.
Oh yeah.
They're always a 4-letter word. It's W-O-R-K.
Oh yeah, it's always work. Yeah.
If you think a relationship is going to work without work, you're delusional.
Yeah. Forming, and then the second phase is storming, where it's like, okay, at first we were like talking about all of our similarities, and now we're talking about our differences, and now I see like, we have like, differing opinions and like stances on things, and things are not going to be, you have to get through these like difficult conversations and challenges and conflict. And then you get to norming, which is okay. Like if you even get to the third stage, a lot of like professional and personal and professional relationships don't get to this third stage of norming. Like, okay, we got through it. Now I understand you. I accept you for who you are. Now we're like, okay, let's let's really figure out this process. And then the fourth stage is performing, where, now like you're doing all of the superstar work, like things are like really efficient. And so I just bring this up because if you have a larger team, that storming part is going to like last ages. So that's another reason why I think like people lay off other people. Like with new management, or like, I don't like you, I don't like them, like, or like they don't have the soft skills to navigate these challenges, so we just don't need them, and we can have like less people. And so, my other point of hard skills are great, soft skills are actually like, a lot of times more important, because we've all heard this, it's people will hire and continue to work with people they like working with, rather.
Also, to reinforce your point, it's a good way to determine that if your job's on the line, if your higher up, your executives have a hard time communicating, that's a red flag. Try to find another job at that point.
Yeah. True. Oh, yeah, if you see that in leadership meetings.
Because that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
The corporate didn't know how to reconcile a business strategy, and they axed out the moneymaker department that I was in because they wanted to do what they were familiar with, and they didn't know how to reconcile the difference. So,
yeah.
It's a thing that happens.
Yeah, not that great. Yeah.
On the topic of teamwork, one thing that I've thought about is, this role probably falls on like the project manager, more likely in larger teams, but like on a small team where there is no designated project manager, we're kind of multidisciplined. I think the ability to, how do I put this? The ability to conduct and facilitate communication between your team is extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that on a team I'm working on, meetings are fairly quiet, lots of kind of awkward silences and pauses.
Yeah.
Where, sometimes I feel like I just need to jump in and say like, okay guys, all right, let's move on and let's do this,
Yeah.
I think that is another way that designers can bring value to a team.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the facilitator skill is so important. And it's remembering like, no matter, even if they're not designers, everyone is a designer of this product. And so, but the product designers know how to facilitate the conversation. And so it's like, get on the whiteboard and like have like questions prepared, like, or understand how people work. Like, like in our workshops, whether you've been here or not, a lot of times when I ask questions, or like I give you guys like sticky notes, so you write things down, and then I feel like it gives people more confidence to then talk about it in your small groups. So I also do that at work.
Reliability is also probably the most significant thing, because what happens is, usually, reliability is the most important trait a person has.
Mm-hmm.
If they know they can count on you to get things done, they know they can count on you to identify the resources they know you can get, then they come to you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes, they can get overloaded.
Start taking advantage.
Yeah. Exactly.
Where does this when it's documented that you can take advantage? I work on a 13-person team, and we work with tickets, and since I've been there, I have 1/3 of the tickets.
Oh, okay, see ya.
But I'm really good at solving problems.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're at time now. I thought I had so much time. But to flip through the last 3 slides, so this was luxury experiences from commoditization. Again, there are screens that are just like basic UI. Like, don't even worry about that. Like, just like let them be. Let the design system handle that. Let the AI handle those things. But work on things increase brand expressiveness. Think about the accessibility and inclusion. So now that again, we automated the rest of the process, now we can reach for the things that used to be reach goals. We can think past the MVP now. So that's the point of this one. I think we already talked about business acumen. all these posts and articles about like how to like read these 10 books, and it's basically an MBA. You know, really like recommend that. I'll post it in the group. And lastly is advocacy. So like I said, the work of a product designer is talking a lot. It's advocating for your work. It's advocating for users at all times, because companies will really want to do like dark patterns, you know, intentionally or not. So like really learn to lean into conflict and become like, oh, I'm a facilitator, I'm a mediator, oh, like we're very empathetic. And then share that work and insights. Show like there's so much data out there of like when we are transparent with our users, it increased sales like this much, you know? Like we have like so much more like retention. And then my last point here, like don't preach to the choir. Maybe I'm preaching to all of you, but actually speak to stakeholder problems. Like don't leave all of what I'm trying to say is don't leave all the talking and all of the thoughts with other designers. Like we get it. Share that with everybody else, you know? And then they'll respect you, even though it may be scary to like, oh, I don't know, me as a woman, I guess, like to like have any conflict in the workplace, but I've learned to go past that. And now I feel like people respect me more. Yeah, so thank you so much. I guess I'll go past these slides. Oh, and then last thing is I wanted to announce that next year I'm launching Friends of Figma Las Vegas. So we are approved as a chapter. That means I'll be starting to do like more virtual events, probably about like Figma workshops, or we can also just like hang out. I get a tiny $200 budget for the year. So that means, you know, I don't know, I guess I'll buy like pizza or something in December. But we could talk about that in the LinkedIn group. So, you know, if you haven't already, please join, and then you can get the latest announcements and where to join Friends of Figma next month. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.